to move on and talk about the president a little bit because, not only did he take a shot, one or two, at Joe Biden today, he also went after the Federal Reserve. This is President Trump on the south lawn of the White House as he was leaving to go to the border. He's still on his way there now. And he touched on the economy. In fact, that's pretty much all he talked about. He talked a lot in one way, shape, or form about the economy. He was saying how well it's doing, in particular after the jobs report that we received this morning. But he says it could be even better and says it would skyrocket if the Fed cuts rates. Now, that was backed up by Larry Kudlow, National Economic Council director, who defended the president's recent picks for the Federal Reserve Board. Take a listen.
Presidents have been appointing Fed board members for years and years and years and years and years. When I was first here under Reagan, he made some outstanding appointments. That's the way of expressing his philosophy. He's absolutely entitled to that.
All right, let's get to Raymond James policy analyst Ed Mills, who's with us, and Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council President Kara Kerrigan, who's with us as well. All right, Ed, that's what we were talking about with Joe Biden. Kind of threw us off there a little. We'll get back to that. That makes 2020 very interesting, his comments today. But we were talking before that almost exclusively about this. The president and then Larry Kudlow, I guess, in his interview with Stewart, basically saying a couple things. The economy is great, but it could be even better if it wasn't for this darn Federal Reserve. What do you make of this dynamic?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. When we first saw the kind of makeup of the Federal Reserve post the election, we quickly realized that this president was going to have the ability to choose 6 of the 7 members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. And initially, for the first 4 picks, we saw businessman Trump getting very down-the-middle guys, individuals who the market was very comfortable with. And then the Fed started doing things he didn't like. And so now he has moved more towards the populist Trump, picking these individuals. It's unclear whether or not the Senate is going to confirm these 2 picks.
Right.
But it's going to have a lot of pressure on them because the bigger issue here is that these are 2 big anti-regulatory picks to the Federal Reserve that have terms that go, one of them, until 2030. So it doesn't matter what happens with the next presidential election. You get 2 individuals on there that will keep the deregulatory agenda of this president in place, as well as push for the monetary policy he wants.
Yeah.
He absolutely is going to fight hard for these 2 guys.
Well, it is interesting, the 2 guys being Steve Moore and then Herman Cain, Karen, is that if you look at both political backgrounds, and, issues in terms of confirmation for both in their personal history and, the Herman Cain's past that got him out of the 2012 race for president certainly could come back up at a confirmation hearing accused of sexual harassment and the like. But to the point of the Federal Reserve, Karen, the critics of the president will say, but this is supposed to be a non-political, an apolitical organization, and you're going in the opposite direction. Is it smart, do you think?
Well, I think he's, picking who he thinks will serve well, in that role. And, certainly both Herman and Steve, pro free enterprise, type of guys, and on the issues in terms of pro growth policies, very favorable, in that light. So, there's 2 openings here. The president, can, obviously he's picking who he thinks will fill those roles. And be most competent in those roles. And, we'll see what happens when it comes to the confirmation process.
Right. We'll see if they get through. The other issue, though, is policy. And, Ed, I think that's interesting as well, is that if you're the president, you come out today and you say 2 things, right? You say, number one, the economy's great. Everything's great right now. And, and there's a lot of numbers to back that up. As I said, most recently, the jobs report, which wasn't a blowout number. It was a good number, though. It's just another solid economic statistic. And at the same time, you're saying the Federal Reserve should be cutting interest rates, which, obviously you're not usually doing when the economy is great. So what do you make of that particular part? Forget, Herman Cain and Steve Moore for a minute.
Yeah, so as I've heard Larry Kudlow talk about this, he views this as more of an insurance policy. And I think that what they're saying is that, the U.S. economy is doing great, but how do we get it to the next leg? I also think what the president is doing here is he's setting up a straw man, that if he's going into his reelection in 2020 and the economy is not doing well, he wants someone to blame.
He's got someone to blame.
He wants Democrats on the Hill. He wants the kind of policies of the Fed to be the reason, not his own personal policies, not the fact that he's led a trade war, not his tariffs. It is something else. And so why he's pushing for them is that if he doesn't get them, he has a straw man.
I think a lot of people, I mean, that's a very popular, what Ed just said, Karen's a very popular read on this, and I think for understandable reasons, because, you know, logically speaking, this wouldn't be the time to necessarily cut rates right now. Now, the administration does make a counter argument, as you know, as Ed referred to, and Kudlow has come out and said this. It's about inflation and what have you. But how would you respond to that? That all the president wants is kind of an insurance policy in case things go south.
Well, what I've seen with the president, he uses his bully pulpit to influence a lot of things, and you know, but there are things that he has under his control right now that can help strengthen the economy. And you know, on the trade issue, certainly, you know, getting to a deal, you know, with China, I think will strengthen the economy, strengthen investment. And then after
China,
that, you've got USMCA.
Yep.
So there's things that he has in his control right now, I think, that he can do to strengthen the economy and improve the confidence of all businesses.
All right, since you brought up China, Karen, I do want to get to that. I mean, we're certainly, it looks like getting closer and closer to the possibility of getting a trade deal. In fact, we had word today that maybe Liu He, who you see on the screen there next to President Trump, might stay the weekend in Washington, try to hammer things out. So, Karen, you're almost there. What do you think?
You know, I hope so. You know, we continue to hear the president has made very positive comments about that. But then there's, you know, then along comes Lighthizer and Navarro saying, well, we'll see. Right. And there's a lot of issues to work out. But they have to get this thing resolved, I think, sooner rather than later, because it is impacting growth. We've always said the longer this goes on, the deeper the impact on the economy. And then besides that, you've got USMCA. That's going to be a heavy lift. And I think you got to get this behind us so you can move on to that, and then on to other trade agreements. And again, I think that will strengthen growth, confidence, investment, all the things that we need for more robust growth in the economy.
USMCA, there's some issues with that, too, in terms of the president's threats, especially, Ed, what he said about the border and the possible tariffs. We'll get into that as we continue. But two-part for you. You agree with Karen that it's still a heavy lift in the Congress in terms of getting that passed? And what's your read on China?
So I view with everything in Trump world is connected. And so kind of what happens with the economy, what happens with the Mueller report, what happens with the job report, all play into the negotiations on the USMCA, all play into the negotiations on China. So am I still anticipating a deal with China? Absolutely. But am I thinking that this is going to get done near term? I'm a little bit more cautious. I think we might have to wait until the June G20 meeting before Trump and Xi are in a room together. The other thing I look for there is that they're talking about maybe China has until 2025 to implement everything. So that gives me the feeling that whatever comes out of those meetings are probably more grandiose, but maybe China doesn't follow through. Then with the USMCA, I look at that and say yesterday with the president saying we're going to give Mexico a one-year deadline before we impose possible 25% tariffs on cars.
Right.
That tells me that this president is totally fine to go into an election cycle with trade fights because he thinks that does really well with his base. And so he's going to threaten the withdrawal of NAFTA. He's going to threaten Congress that if they don't pass USMCA, there's going to be dire consequences.
Right.
It is an us against them that he's setting up here.
We're going to talk more about that now. Karen and Ed, thanks to both of you. We appreciate you both coming on.
Thank you.